Welcome to another season of Elk Week. This year, I'm going to go right to the heart of what I love about elk hunting, and that's elk calling. And I'm going to talk about the top 5 most common elk calling scenarios that elk hunters are likely to face. Before I jump in and get started, I just want to remind everyone that this information, as well as a whole lot more detailed information about elk hunting and elk calling, is available at Outdoor Class. That includes the original University of Elk Hunting online course. It's been recently updated, and all of that's available there, as well as a whole bunch of elk hunting related content, plus mule deer and backcountry survival, lots of things related to the outdoors. And you can sign up using the promo code ELK10115. That's ELK10115. It's going to save you, and it's also going to give you access to everything out there at Outdoor Class. So let's jump in and talk a little bit about elk calling. I want to talk about the top 5 elk calling scenarios that we face most commonly out in the field during September. And I'm not going to do it in any particular order or talk about which one's most common, but I really feel like of these 5 scenarios, they're going to cover probably 70 or 80% of the encounters that we have when we're calling to elk. And so if we can understand those top 5 and then recognize maybe the reason why the elk are behaving a certain way, and then apply a tactic to help us there, it'll really simplify our elk calling. When you break it down, you either have an elk that is vocal or an elk that's non-vocal. And if it's non-vocal, there's a lot of different directions we can go on that. But if the elk's vocal, he's either coming into you, he's staying put, or he's moving away. And once we recognize that, we can really determine the main reason or reasons why he's acting that way, and then find a fix to be able to call him in. Elk vocalize, and they do that for a reason. And especially when we're talking about bull elk, their vocalization is primarily going to happen during the rut, the month of September. And obviously it might start a little earlier in August, it might go into October. Bulls are going to vocalize throughout the year, but probably 95% of their vocalization takes place during the rut. And that's by design. Bull elk vocalize either to attract females or to attract a challenger. And both of those things are what create the rut, the breeding. Bulls will either call to bring cows in to establish their dominance, to display their dominance to the cows, to attract the cows, or they'll bugle to attract a challenger or to vocalize their dominance to another challenger, and ultimately sometimes end up fighting to establish that dominance. And that dominance gives them breeding rights to the harem. So once we recognize that there's a reason elk vocalize, when we as callers go out and try to call in an elk, we can play to one of those 2 emotions or reasons why elk vocalize, either to attract a cow, or to be attracted by the cow, or to challenge another bull, or be challenged by another bull. And really, as a caller, those are our 2 primary focuses. We need to attract that elk, either make him think that we're a cow that's ready to be bred, or that needs to be added to his harem, or that we're a bull that he needs to come in and decide who is the dominant bull, so that the dominant bull is going to get the ability to establish the harem and breed those cows. There's really no reason in a natural, perfect world setting that an elk's not going to come to your calls. So if an elk isn't coming to your calls, we have to figure out why that is and then overcome that. And sometimes it's just not possible to overcome that. But again, looking at 70 or 80% of the encounters we're going to have when we're calling to elk, they do fit into one of those top 5 scenarios. The first one I'll talk about is the standard challenge sequence, when the bull just comes in on a string. Easiest one, the most simple one, the most exciting one. It's that challenge sequence. The bull that is just responsive. He's going to answer your calls, whether they're cow calls or bugles, and then he's going to come into that. And that's what we all dream about as elk callers and elk hunters. It's getting a bull that responds. He fires off every time we make an elk sound, and he comes walking right into the setup. And ultimately, that's how elk should behave in that perfect world situation. Unfortunately, there's a lot of factors that make elk not behave like that, but let's just assume 10 or 15% of our encounters are like that. All we have to do is get in a little bit closer to that elk, give him some cow calls, and if he comes to the cow calls, just keep giving him cow calls. There's no need to even bugle. And getting close is the key. A lot of times, though, a bull will hang up and he'll start calling to the cow, expecting the cow to come to him. And when that happens, that's when I get aggressive. And I go into that challenge sequence where I cow call, the bull answers expecting the cow to come to him, and then I hammer him with a challenge bugle. And that reaction by that bull is just a part of their nature. That is how they are designed to handle the rut and to establish dominance. And a lot of times they don't even think about their senses in that situation. They come marching right into the setup. Unfortunately, there are factors that contribute to the elk not just coming in. And that can vary from hunting pressure, high density of predators, heat, drought, the moon phase, a lot of different things that might make that bull either more wary or just less likely to exert the energy that it takes to come in and possibly fight another challenger. So one of the things that we run into a lot is a bull that still vocalizes, still is talking, but he's moving away. And sometimes we feel like he's running away from us as the caller, but typically that's not the case. There are times where a bull that's been pressured is a little more timid. He'll still talk, but he just likes to keep that buffer between you, the caller, and himself. But for the most part, if a bull is very vocal and responsive, but just keeps moving away, it's typically because he's following cows. And the cows are on a very strict schedule, trying to get to their bedding area, and that bull just doesn't want to take the chance of turning around, coming in and fighting you, and getting separated from those cows, either because they get too far ahead and there's the potential that another bull moves in and takes over. So when a bull is vocal but moving away, it's typically because he's following cows. And so whether that's a younger bull that has cows before the real peak rut's kicked in, maybe he's a little more timid, a little more afraid to come in and fight. And so he does kind of push the cows away as they're going to the bedding area. But primarily it's going to be an actual herd bull, a more mature bull, not necessarily a big giant bull that's going to be really hard to call in, especially in that peak rut area, that peak rut time frame. A big herd bull is going to be so focused on breeding that he's going to be nearly impossible to call in. But I'm talking about the period just before that, when those bulls are still susceptible to calling. They're just locked in to moving to the bedding area with the cows. So it's not that you've bumped them or scared them or that they're call shy and they keep moving away. Usually it's just the fact that they're following cows. And so in that case, you've got to get in closer. You've got to keep with them, put some pressure on them, get inside 120 or 150 yards and then challenge them. Sometimes that's enough to get them to turn around, leave the cows for what they think might just be 30 seconds or a minute, and then they can catch back up to them, or just keep following them all the way to the bedding area. And that brings me to the third scenario, which is a bedded bull. Probably my favorite scenario. And the reason for that is those bulls are no longer on the move. They aren't following the group of cows up to the bedding area. They're now stationary and the cows aren't going anywhere. So that bull doesn't have to worry about his cows wandering off or moving off and him losing control of them or just getting separated from them. Now they're together, now they're not moving, and they're in an area that that bull wants to protect. He's territorial about the bedding area, so he's going to try to protect it, especially from another bull that comes in there getting aggressive. So my favorite tactic in the bedding area is the same challenge sequence, where I move in close. I know that bull's in there bedded, hopefully with cows. That makes it even better, but even a solo bull doesn't want company from another bull. So I move in close, I cow call, the bull responds, and if he gets up and comes all the way into the cow calls, I don't bugle. But typically what happens again, especially in that bedding area, he's just inviting that cow to come and join him in the bedding area. And he's usually not going to get up and come all the way into your setup. So in that case, I do have to escalate it again and give him the challenge bugle. So it starts with cow calling, he responds, I cut him off with the challenge. And that's probably my most efficient calling scenario and calling tactic is the midday bedded bull. The fourth scenario that I'll talk about is a bull that just hangs up. He's still vocal, but we can't call him in. He's not moving away, but it seems like we get in that 150 or 200 yard range, and that bull just doesn't want to break loose. No matter what we do, we cow call, he doesn't come to the cow calls. We challenge bugle, we go timid with him, we try raking, all the different tactics, and that bull just won't come in. And typically what happens in that hang up situation is the bull can see where the calls are coming from, and he can't see an elk. And if that happens, that bull's usually not coming any closer. He can see what he needs to see, but he can't see what he wants to see. So you can see the area where you're calling from, but he doesn't see another elk. His senses start saying, hold on, there might be some danger there. So your setup is going to be critical in that situation, making sure that that caller is back in an area where as the bull comes in, he's not getting to a point where he can see where the caller's at before he gets in a shooting lane. So making sure that that shooter's out there with good shooting lanes before the bull gets to where he can see where the calls are coming from. Another reason that bull might hang up is if he's been pressured. And a lot of times in an area where there's a lot of hunting pressure or a lot of predators, the elk are just on high alert. They've been bumped, they've been chased, and getting them to just drop their guard and walk into a setup can be difficult. So a lot of times they'll hang up. They'll still talk to you, sometimes a little more timid in that situation, but they're still vocalizing. They just won't come in that final 150 or 200 yards. And again, setups are important, but also in this case, it's a matter of making that bull feel comfortable. If he feels like he can use his senses, he's going to be a lot more likely to come into that setup. So setting a shooter up either downwind or upwind, if the thermals are going up, you want to be above that. If the thermals are still coming down, you want to be below it, because as that bull comes into the collar, if he can get downwind or get upwind if the thermals are going up, he's going to feel like his senses are going to protect him if there is danger. He's also going to try to get to a point where he can see, which is, again, the main reason why they do hang up. If they get to a point where they can see the collar but don't see an elk, they hang up. Well, if he can get to a point where he feels like he's going to be able to see the collar, he's going to go to that point. If he can do both, so midday, especially as those thermals are going up, now the bull can get above you, he can get a visual, and he can also smell. So two of his senses are working for him. We just need to make sure that shooter's set up to take advantage of it before the bull actually gets to the point where he can see or smell the collar. And then the fifth scenario that is probably pretty common on public land, do-it-yourself type hunts, and it's probably the biggest frustration when it comes to elk calling, is elk that are call shy or non-vocal altogether. And again, the elk naturally want to vocalize. They need to vocalize. That's how the pecking order is established. That's how they attract the cows. So vocalization is important. And if an elk's not vocalizing, there's a reason. And again, it comes back to typically hunting pressure or predators. And in that case, there's two things you can do. Number one, and probably the one that I recommend the most, find a new area. Just relocate, because if you can find an area where the hunting pressure is less or where those elk go to feel safe, they're going to act completely differently than in those areas where there's a lot of traffic. Same with predators. If there's wolves in an area and they're actively hunting in that area, the elk are going to move, or they're going to just go tight-lipped for a while until the wolves move on. So finding an area where the wolves aren't active, it can be completely different. Just 3-4 miles away, sometimes the elk will act completely differently than they are right there where the wolves are. The second thing is you're going to have to be more timid. If you're locked into that area, if you don't want to move or can't move, these bulls are not going to react to an aggressive situation. They know if they get aggressive, they aren't paying nearly as much attention to their senses as they need to, and that's just a recipe for danger and disaster. So you're going to have to be more timid. That is a bull that if you can get him to just timidly bugle to you once or twice, if you pinpoint his location, I like to move in, get fairly close, and then just set up and give him some soft cow calls. Let them come in cautiously, curiously. They still want to come in and check out the cows, but they want to do it on their terms, and they want to make sure they're protected. So your setup's going to be critical. More distance between a caller and a shooter is going to be helpful. Again, that bull's going to be focused on the caller. So he's not aware that there's a shooter set out in front, and that's going to be a huge advantage to you having a two-person setup there. Those are my top 5 calling scenarios. The regular challenge bugle scenario where a bull does what he's supposed to do coming into the calls. A bull that bugles but moves away from you, again, it might be from pressure, it might be that the bull's a little timid, but for the most part, if he's moving away, he's following cows or he's going to his bedding area. The third scenario is the bedding area and hunting those bulls during the middle of the day when the thermals are coming up and they're not on the move. Fourth one is the bull that holds his ground and hangs up, still vocalizes, but is just not comfortable coming into your setup. And then the last one is that call-shy, non-vocal elk that can be hard to get to respond, and once he responds once or twice, seems like he just goes quiet. I hope you find value in that. Again, if you want to visit outdoorclass.com, you'll find all of those explained in a lot more detail as far as the tactics that I use to call in elk in those situations, how to recognize those situations, and a lot more detailed information about elk hunting and elk calling. And be sure to use the promo code ELK10115, and good luck this hunting season.